Howdy, my fellow gamers, and welcome back to yet another episode of Storytime with Freak, episode 28, as we continue our dive through Neal Shusterman's Thunderhead. To be clear, not every act I take is perfect. People confuse a state of being with a set of actions. I will try to explain the difference here. I, the Thunderhead, am perfect. This is true by definition, and there's no need to refute it because it is fact. Every day, however, I must make many billions of decisions and take billions of actions. Some of them are small, like turning off a light when no one is present in the room in order to conserve electricity. Other decisions are major, like inducing a minor earthquake to prevent a larger one. But none of those acts is perfect. I could turn off that light sooner, thereby conserving more energy. I could have made the earthquake 1 degree smaller and saved a handcrafted vase from shattering on the floor. I have come to realize that there are only two perfect acts. They are the two most important acts known to me, but I forbid myself to perform them and leave them in the hands of humankind. They are the creation of life and life's taking. The Thunderhead. Chapter 28, That Which Comes. Like most tonus compounds, the one where Grayson Tolliver found himself was styled to look much older than it was. In this case, it was built of brick and had ivy-covered walls. But it being winter, the vines were cold and bare, looking more like spiderwebs. He entered through a long trellised colonnade, lined with skeletal rose bushes. It all must have been very beautiful in the spring and summer, but now in the dead of winter, it looked like he felt. The first person he saw was a woman in a tonus sackcloth frock, who offered him a smile and upturned palms as a greeting. "I need to talk to Brother McLeod," he said, remembering what Scythe Anastasia had told him. "You'll have to get permission from Curate Mendoza," she responded. "I'll go retrieve him." Then she sauntered off at such a leisurely pace, Grayson wanted to grab her and push her along. When Curate Mendoza arrived, he at least walked as if there was some sense of urgency. "I'm here for sanctuary," Grayson told him. "I was told to ask for Brother McLeod." "Yes, of course," he said, as if this was something he addressed on a regular basis. He then escorted Grayson into one of the buildings of the compound and to a bedroom. There was a lit candle on a nightstand. The first thing the curate did was snuff it out with a dowser. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "I'll let Brother McLeod know you're waiting for him." Then the curate closed the door, but didn't lock it, leaving Grayson with his own thoughts and a way out if he wanted one. The room was austere. No creature comforts beyond what was necessary. There was a bed, a chair, and the nightstand. There were no decorations on the wall except for an iron tuning fork above the headboard, its prongs pointing upward. A bident, they called it, the symbol of their faith. In the nightstand drawer was a sackcloth outfit, and a pair of sandals was on the floor, beside the doused candle with a leather hymnal with the bident embossed on the cover. It was peaceful. It was calming. It was unbearable. He had gone from the uneventful world of Grayson Tolliver to the tumultuous extremes of Slade Bridger, and now he was cast into the belly of blandness, doomed to be digested by boredom. Well, at least I'm still alive, he thought, although he wasn't entirely sure that was a benefit. Purity had been gleaned. Not supplanted, not relocated, but gleaned. She was no more, and in spite of the horror she had attempted, he ached for her. He longed to hear her defiant voice. He had become addicted to her chaos. He would have to adjust to a life without her, as well as a life without himself. For who knew who he was now? He lay down on the bed, which at least was comfortable, and waited for perhaps half an hour. He wondered if Tonus, like the Office of Unsavory Affairs, made everyone wait as a matter of policy. Finally, he heard the creak of the door. It was late afternoon now, and the light from the small window lit the room just enough for him to see that the man before him wasn't much older than he. He also had some sort of hard casing on one of his arms. "I'm Brother McLeod," he said. "The curate has accepted your request for sanctuary. I understand you asked for me personally?" "A friend of mine told me to." "May I ask who?" "No, you may not." He seemed a bit annoyed, but let it go. "May I at least see your ID?" And when Grayson hesitated, Brother McLeod said, "Don't worry. No matter who you are or what you've done, we won't turn you over to the authority interface. I'm sure it already knows I'm here." "Yes," agreed Brother McLeod. "But your presence here is a matter of religious freedom. The Thunderhead will not interfere." Grayson reached into his pocket and handed him an electronic flashcard, still flashing with that bright red You. Unsavory, he said. We get more and more unsavories these days. Well, Slade, that won't matter here. That's not my name. Brother McLeod gave him a questioning look. Is that something else you won't talk about? No, it's just not worth the effort. Then what do we call you? Grayson. Grayson Tolliver. All right, then. Brother Tolliver it is. Grayson supposed he'd have to live with being called the Brother Tolliver now. What's that thing on your arm? It's called a cast. So am I going to have to wear one? Brother McLeod laughed. Not unless you break your arm. Excuse me? It's to help aid the natural healing process. We shun nanites, and unfortunately my arm was broken by a scythe. Really? Grayson actually grinned, wondering if it was scythe anesthesia. Brother McLeod didn't appreciate Grayson's grin. His demeanor cooled slightly. We have afternoon intoning in 10 minutes. There are clothes for you in the drawer. I'll wait outside while you change. Do I have to go? Grayson asked. Intoning didn't sound like something he really wanted to be a part of. Yes, said Brother McLeod. That which comes can't be avoided. Intoning took place in a chapel that, after the candlelight was doused, had barely enough light to allow Grayson to see, in spite of the high stained glass windows. Do you do everything in the dark? Grayson asked. Eyes can be deceiving. We appreciate the other senses more. There was the sweet smell of incense covering something foul that Grayson soon learned was a basin of filthy water. Primordial ooze, Brother McLeod called it. It's filled with all the diseases that we've become immune to. Intoning consisted of the curate striking the huge steel tuning fork in the center, 12 times in succession with a mallet. The congregation, which seemed to number about 50, matched the tone. With each strike of the fork, the vibration built and resonated to the point of being not quite painful, but disorienting and dizzying. Grayson did not open his mouth to vocalize the tone. The curate gave a short speech, a sermon, Brother McLeod called it. He spoke of his many journeys through the world in search of the grateful. The fact that we have not found it does not mean that the search is a failure, for the search itself is every bit as valuable as the finding. The congregation hummed their agreement. Whether we find it today, or tomorrow, or whether it is our sect or another that finds it, I believe to my very core that we will one day hear and feel the great resonance, and it will save us all. Then, when the sermon was over, the congregation rose and approached the curate in line. Each one dipped a finger into the rancid primordial ooze, touched it to their forehead, and licked it off their finger. Grayson became nauseated just watching. You don't have to partake in the earthly bowl yet, Brother McLeod told him, which was only partially reassuring. Yet? How about not at all? To which Brother McLeod once more said, that which comes can't be avoided. That night the wind howled with unusual ferocity, and sleet hissed as it pummeled the little window in Grayson's whim. The Thunderhead could influence the weather, but not entirely change it, or if it could, it chose not to. It did try to make sure that when storms came, at least they came at more convenient times. He tried to convince himself that this was the storm, this was the Thunderhead crying icy tears for him. But who was he kidding? The Thunderhead had millions of more important things to do than to lament for his troubles. He was safe. He was protected. What more could he ask for? Everything. Curate Mendoza came into the room at about 9 or 10. Light spilled in from the hallway, but once he was inside, he closed the door, leaving them both in darkness again. Grayson heard the complaint of the chair as the curate sat in it. I came to see how you're getting on, he said. I'm fine. Adequacy is all that can be expected at this juncture, I suppose. Then his face was illuminated with the harsh light of a tablet. The curate typed and swiped. I thought you shunned electricity. Not at all, the curate told him. We shun light in our ceremonies, and our sleeping quarters are dark to encourage our members to leave their rooms and seek communion with others in our public spaces. Then he turned the tablet so Grayson could see it. It showed images of the burning theater. Grayson tried not to grimace. This happened 2 days ago. It is my suspicion that you were involved and that the scythedom is after you. Grayson neither confirmed nor denied the charge. If that is the case, the curate said, you need not mention it. You are safe here, because any enemy of the scythedom is a friend of ours. So you condone violence? We condone resistance to unnatural death. Scythes are bringers of unnatural death, so anything that frustrates their blades and bullets is fine with us. Then he reached out and touched one of the horn-like bumps on Grayson's head. Grayson backed away at his touch. Those will have to be removed, he said. We do not allow body modifications, and your head will be shaved to allow your hair to grow out in the color the universe intended. Grayson said nothing. Now that Purity was dead, he wasn't going to miss being Slade Bridger, because it just reminded him of her. But he did not like having no choice in the matter. Mendoza rose. I do hope you'll come out to the library or one of the recreation rooms and get to know your fellow Tonists. I know they'd like to get you to know you better, especially Sister Piper, who greeted you when you arrived. I just lost someone close to me. I don't feel like being social. Then you must, especially if your loved one was lost to a gleaning. We Tonists don't acknowledge death by scythe, which means you are not allowed to mourn. So now he was being told what he was and not allowed to feel? He wanted the last bit of Slade Bridger that was still in him to tell the curate to go to hell, but instead he just said, I won't pretend to understand your ways, but you will pretend, said Mendoza. If you wish to have sanctuary, you will find your new purpose among us, and pretend until our ways become yours. And if they never do, then you'll just have to keep on pretending, the curate said. Then he added, it has certainly worked for me. 620 miles due south of Wichita, Rowan Damisch sparred with Tiger Salazar. Under different circumstances, it would have been enjoyable for Rowan, competing with a friend in a martial art he'd come to love, but these forced confrontations toward an unknown end left Rowan increasingly unsettled. They sparred twice a day for 2 weeks, and although Tiger got much better with each match, Rowan always won. When they weren't sparring, Rowan was consigned to his room. Tiger, on the other hand, found himself even busier than before Rowan had arrived. More exhausting runs, more resistance training, repetitive bow-guitar drills, as well as maneuvers with every kind of blade, from sword to dagger, until each one felt like a perfect extension of himself. Then, at the end of each day, just as his muscles were feeling the wear of his efforts, Tiger would receive a deep tissue massage to make his knotted flesh supple. Before Rowan arrived, the massages were maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but now he had them every day, and he was exhausted so often that he fell asleep on the table, every time. I'll beat him, he told Scythe Rand. You'll see. I have no doubt, she said. For someone who, according to Rowan, was deceptive and heartless, she seemed pretty sincere. It was during one of his massages that the Emerald Scythe came in and asked the masseuse to leave. Tiger thought she might take over. He thrilled at the idea of her hands on him, but to his disappointment, she didn't touch him at all. She simply said, It's time. Time for what? For you to get your ring. She seemed melancholy about it somehow. Tiger thought he knew why. I know you didn't want to give it to me until after I beat Rowan. Couldn't be helped, she said. He got up and slipped his robe on, showing not the slightest bit of modesty before her. Why should he? There was nothing about himself that he wanted hidden from her, inside or out. You could have been a model for Michelangelo. I'd have liked that, he said, trying his robe, to be chiseled in marble. She moved toward him, leaning in, and gave him the lightest of kisses. So light he could barely feel her lips touch his. He thought it might be a prelude to something more, but she backed away. We have an appointment early tomorrow. Get a good night's sleep. What do you mean? What kind of appointment? She offered him a smile, albeit a slim one. You can't receive your Scythe's ring without at least a little bit of ceremony. Will Rowan be there? Tiger asked. Best if he's not. She was right, of course. There was no need to rub Rowan's nose in the fact that he hadn't been chosen. But Tiger had meant what he said for the moment he had the ring. He'd give Rowan immunity. I hope, Tiger said, that once the ring is on my finger, you look at me a little bit differently. She took a long look into his eyes, and that did more to melt his muscles than the grinding knuckles of the masseuse. I'm sure that things will be different, she told him. Be up to go and ready by 7 o'clock sharp. After she had left, he allowed himself a moment to breathe a contented sigh. In a world where everyone was guaranteed to get whatever they needed, not everyone got everything they wanted. Rowan sure hadn't, and until recently, Tiger hadn't even known that he wanted to be a Scythe. But now that it was about to happen, he knew it was right. For the first time he could remember, he was intensely pleased with the direction in which his life was moving. Rowan was not brought out for sparring the next day, or the day after that. His only visitors were the guards, who brought his food and took away his tray when he was done. He had counted the days since he arrived. The old-time holidays had come and gone, with no celebration at the penthouse. It was the week last of the year. He didn't even know what the new year was going to be called. Year of the Raptor, one of the guards told him when he asked, and hoping the guard could have warmed enough to spill some information, he asked, What's going on? Why haven't Tiger and Scythe Rand dragged me out for sparring? Don't tell me I'm not their Bokatar bitch anymore. But if the guard knew the answer, he was just saying, just eat. He said, We've been given strict orders not to let you starve. Late in the afternoon of the second day of solitude, Scythe Rand came in with both guards. Vacation must be over, Rowan quipped, but the Emerald Scythe was not up for banter today. Put him in the chair, she ordered the guards. I don't want him to be able to move an inch. And then Rowan caught sight of the roll of duct tape. To be tied to a chair was one thing. To be duct taped was worse. This is it, thought Rowan. Tiger's training is over, and whatever she's going to do to me, it's happening now. So Rowan made his move. As soon as the guards tried to grab him, he exploded in a series of brutal blows that left one of their jaws broken and the other one on the ground desperately grasping for air. But before he could break for the door, Rand was on him and had him pinned his back to the floor and knee against his chest with such pressure it was impossible for him to draw a breath. "You will submit to the bondage, or I will knock you out and you'll be bound anyway," she told him. "But if it goes that way, I'll make sure your teeth get broken again." Then, when he was on the verge of losing consciousness, she took her knees off his chest. He was weakened just enough to make it easier for them to secure him to the chair. And that's where they left him, for over an hour. The tape was worse than the rope they had used on him in Scythe Brom's home. It constricted his chest so he could breathe only in shallow puffs. His arms and leg had no play whatsoever, no matter how much he tried to work his way out of the tape. The sun set, leaving nothing but the city lights of San Antonio and the pale glow of a rising gibbous moon, which lit the room in dim blues and long shadows. Finally, the door opened, and one of the guards rolled in. Someone who was seated in some sort of chair with wheels on either side. Scythe Rand came in behind him. "Hi, Rowan." It was Tiger. He was silhouetted against the light coming in from the hallway, so Rowan couldn't see his face, but he recognized the voice. He sounded tired and raspy. "What's going on, Tiger? Why did Rand do this to me? And what the hell is that you're sitting on?" "It's called a wheelchair," he said, choosing only to answer the third question. "It's from the Age of Mortality. Not much need for it these days, but it came in useful today." There was something odd about the way Tiger spoke, not just the raspy tone of his voice, but the cadence of his speech, his choice of words, the way he enunciated them so clearly. Tiger shifted a hand and something on it caught the moonlight. Rowan didn't need to be told what it was. "You got your ring." "Yes," Tiger said. "Yes, I did." There was a feeling in Rowan's gut now, heavy and putrid. It was working its way up to the surface. A part of Rowan already knew what it was, but he wasn't willing to let it seep into his awareness, as if refusing to think about it could chase away the dark specter of truth. But illumination was only a moment away. "And I can't quite reach the light switch. Could you get it?" She reached over and turned on the light, and the reality of the situation hit Rowan with both barrels, because although it was Tiger Salazar sitting in the wheelchair, it wasn't Tiger who found himself looking at Rowan. He was looking at the smiling face of Scythe Goddard. That is the end of that chapter, guys. What a bombshell. Thank you all for choosing to join me for this episode of Storytime with Freak. And I will pose you guys a very simple question for today's topic. What's your favorite color? And why? I will see you guys next time, and as always, stay freaky. Feel free to check out the links down below.